Hey, network junkies, welcome to another DevNet video where I'm going to go through and show you how to do something from the objectives of the DevNet Associate. This one is specific to listing network devices from the Meraki dashboard using the API. So I'm going to use an application called Postman to use the API and make some requests to see whether or not I could grab this data. And then we will take some of that code from Postman, put that into Atom, which is a text editor that I like to use for writing Python scripts. And then we're going to modify that script in order to build a list of network devices from a network that is in a organization. And so what I'm going to use is the Meraki sandbox, the sandbox that's always available to everyone. So I highly recommend using this sandbox to learn how to do your Python scripting and learning how to use the API, because that's available to everybody. So why don't I share my screen and get right into it? Right here, I'm using Postman. Postman, you can go and Google this and download it. I'm using a Mac. So what I have here on the left are collections, which I have downloaded or have modified. You can see I have a bunch of different collections here on the left, and I'm going to use that against this Meraki sandbox. So I'm not going to show you how to pre-configure this, but I want to get into more of the script and how to list network devices using a Python script, so we can see if we can get this working. I already know I need to make get requests, right? So you have to know what a get request is. You have to know what requests are and how we're going to build this script. I already know what I need to get. So I need to first see what organization I'm on. And I think I have that somewhere here. Here, organizations listing. I click on that. I'm going to make a get request with this URL string. That is the API URL. And here is where I'm going to get my organization. So I'll send. I should get an output. Here are my organizations that I have access to. And what I'm really interested in is the sandbox down here. So the key thing to this is knowing the organization ID, because you need to query then the networks that are in that organization. So now I'm going to click on this get request for networks. I want to list all the networks in that organization ID, and I have that already pre-configured, because you see here it wants you to put in organization ID. I'm using the one from this list of organizations, ends in 236. So if I go back to networks, I want to get all the networks in this organization. So if I hover organization ID, it's going to use that organization ending in 236, the organization ID. I'm going to click on send. I should get a list of all the networks that are there. The first one we see here is this DevNet sandbox always on. Now that's a sandbox that you could use for testing for whatever you need to do. So this network ID is important, because if we want to list all the network devices in this network, we need that network ID. So you've got the organization ID, you've got the network ID, and I want to see all the devices in that network. On the left here, under my collection, I have a get request for listing all the devices of a network. We're using Postman, so it's just interfacing with the API. We're going to send that request, and these are all the devices. There's not that many, but you can see that I am able to get a response. See, the status is 200 okay, I have data, and this is using an API key that was available in the documentation when I was looking at this always on lab. So what we want to do is use the code here in Python to get this data, right? So right here in Postman, there is a link called code. If I click on that, it's going to give me the code for Python requests. And this is the code to get the output that we just saw. Now, if you're using different programming languages, you can use select another one, but I specifically want to use Python because that's what's used in the DevNet Associate exam. I'm going to copy this and head over to Atom right here, and I will paste that code. So right here you see that it's already importing a library called requests. Now we need that in order to run this here where we make a request. But before I get to that, this is the URL, the API, the URL that we need to use in order to query the list of devices, to get that list of devices from this network. And because I have my API key here that's used for the DevNet Always On Lab sandbox, it knows that's the network I need, right? And I have access to that network. And so I'm going to get those devices. So it passes the header, which is the Meraki API key. This is the key. And then what we're going to do is make a request using the request library using we're performing a get request. Going to pass this URL and the headers and the payload. And we're going to, whatever we get as a response back from the Meraki dashboard, we're going to put that into this variable called response. And so then we want to print out the response in text. So I went ahead and saved this script as getDevices.py. Now I'm going to bring over my terminal window. I'll zoom in a little bit so you could see this. And I'm in the directory, so I want to run this script. So I'm going to do Python 3 getDevices.py, and we can see what the output is. So there are all the network devices in that network, but it doesn't look pretty, right? So the objective of the DevNet Associate is to get a list of devices. You can do it this way, and you may get asked a question on the exam about the structure or maybe what is required in order to get the list of devices. It may put out some code, for example, and you have to pick what's missing or what needs to be added to this in order to get the right response, or maybe what kind of code will provide the output that they give you. But this is definitely not a nice way to look at this. So what we want to do is take this output here and make it more human readable. And this is where I have learned to use JSON, and to take that JSON output and deserialize it and put it, make it into Python objects like a list. And so the first thing we need to do is import the JSON library. So we'll type import JSON at the top. Now here we have our response, right? So we've printed out this, what it looks like. I'm going to comment it out just to not have it there. And instead, what we want to do is pass the response into the JSON library and deserialize it. So what we can do here is give it another variable. So maybe I'll call it response JSON, just giving it a name. And instead we'll do JSON dot, I believe it's loads. And then we will pass on response dot text. All right, so that will hopefully put that into a JSON format. We could print out the type. I like to do this to see what type it is. Data type, we should see it as a list. So I'll rerun that script. And so you can see now it is a list, right? So if I were to remove this and just do print that response JSON, what do you think we would get? So you can see it's in JSON format, right? You can see this in the beginning, but we have other data in here that we may not need. If I want to list out just the network device, maybe just the model, for example, if we look here, there is a model and it gives you the model and maybe the serial number, because I want to, if there's more than one MX65, I want to know the serial number for the MX65. This is where we can now iterate through the data and actually use a for loop. So what I want to do is for devices in, let's see, I don't like the way that reads. So what I really want to do is just do all devices, and then for device in all devices, we'll create a for loop. And what I want to do is iterate through each model and just print out the model and also the serial number. So I want to do print, and let's say model colon, and I'll use a format string. I'm going to tab it and also say serial number, another format string or variable. So we'll do format, and we're going to call device. And what we want to get from here, I'm going to call from the device in this list the model number. So we need model, all lowercase there. And we also want the serial number. And I believe it was just serial. So if I go back there, serial. So hopefully this works, right? So I think that looks good. I'll save it. And you can see we've had it like this, JSON data. Kind of messed something up there. I'll clear the scroll back. Now we'll print. And there you go. I've now printed out a list of network devices in this network, which is this network right here. Right? So this is the network where I'm using a GET request to get a list of all the devices, but it gave me a lot more data than I really wanted. So I really just wanted to go through the data and grab the model number and also the serial. And I got here now model MX1 MX65, a 8-port switch, and an AP along with their serial numbers. So that is how I'm able to go through that data and create a list of devices from the Meraki dashboard using the API and just create a list of network devices. So I hope that is useful for you, how I was able to use the requests and JSON library, query the API URL using the API key to access the data, convert the output into to JSON, or actually deserialize that, and make it a Python list, a Python object, and then in that list iterate through all of that and just pull out the device model and serial number. So hopefully that was useful for you and it helps you in your DevNet Associate studies. If you found this video useful, give me a like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, guys.